Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take about Biden. the Biden mess that continues to get worse and worse and worse. Some more analysis, I suppose. I don't know how you can, how many times you can analyze a turd, but we'll try. We will try. Interesting news. I got a question on the Lotus Eaters today, me and Little Joan. Right, Little Joan? We were both on, and we asked a question. So if you haven't seen the Lotus Eaters podcast, it was podcast 77. They have not been running on YouTube because they're banned for a week, but you can go to lotuseaters.com if you want to see the question. It's at the end of the show at about an hour when they play all the video questions. All right. Where the F are the checks? They went to Raytheon so they can bomb my country. Journalist rages at identity politics obsessed leftists while Biden does the establishment's bidding. This is British Syrian journalist Richard Medhurst. Yeah, that's what, unfortunately, the Biden voters voted for. They voted to send billions of dollars to defense contractors so we could bomb people overseas who they've never met, people who have never harmed them. But they're wonderful and woke, you see. Orange Man was so bad. They would rather bomb total strangers of color than actually admit that the Democrats are a bunch of warmongering, elitist idiots. They've been conditioned to think that Republicans are bad, and they believe their conditioning. They watch the media, and that's it. See, you're watching this, you're probably not conditioned because you watch YouTube and you're saying, oh, let's see what this guy has to say. But people who watch the news, and there's still millions of people who do in this country, they believe it. They want to believe it. They don't really pay attention to politics. You know, when they watch YouTube, even when they do, they're going to watch something about sports or girls or skateboarding or whatever. They're not going to watch stuff about politics. It's boring to them. It doesn't impact them directly. That's the strategy. See, Biden's doing all this stuff. There's no big announcements. The media's not talking about it. That's why. And I'm very sorry. You know, I haven't really looked much. I used to go to antiwar.com every single day during the Bush administration, during the Obama administration. I'd work on the anti-war comic, and I had tons of material. And then Trump got it. And then it got really hard to do anti-war comic during the Trump administration. I mean, in the beginning, I had a few of them. But about 6 months in, it was like, wow, it's getting harder and harder to come up with anti-war stuff because wars were dying out. It was nice and calm. Wasn't a lot going on. Now, Trump did start up the thing in Yemen, and he did a few things, but you can't even compare it to Bush or Obama. And Biden is from that same vein. Obama continued Bush's war. He just fought it, quote unquote, smarter. And, Biden's not even really from that camp. He's more like Bush. He's more of an old school guy. Our commander-in-chief is nearly 80. He's not thinking in terms of 3D chess, if he can think that much at all. He's going for, most of these wars, I don't think they're about, taking ground and holding it or doing anything other than what kind of weapons deal can we get? And as the United States kind of falls apart, and one of our best exports is weapons, I think these guys feel more and more dependent upon that. They have to get these giant weapons deals to keep people working in this country, to get them some amount of money, to get money coming back from overseas. We used to make all kinds of crazy products. Now we make weapons. It's one of our great imports. Movie industry's dead. That was something, and this is where we're at. This story just broke. John Durnham resigns as U.S. Attorney effective February 28th before Biden AG takes office. Look, Biden is president. Did you really think the Durnham probe on the Mueller Russian collusion thing was going to go anywhere? Even if he found anything, Biden is in charge. His people are in charge. The DOJ belongs to him. This is not going anywhere. They will protect their own. And those guys, they weren't on Trump's team. They were on Biden's team. They were on Obama's team. They were on Hillary's team. They're Democrats. And they will be protected. So, you know, I don't see any, you know, they're not supposed to do that. John Durnham's supposed to be immune. He's special counsel. He can do whatever he wants. He's retiring. They probably told him, you're going to be stymied. Your reputation's going to be ruined. You're not going to get anywhere. No one's going to cooperate with you. And at the end of the day, you're going to leave this office in shame. Or you could retire. And he probably just said, all right, I'll retire. Now, apparently, that doesn't mean the investigation's over, but, I mean, it's not going to go anywhere. They're not, this kind of thing would have to last. Durnham would have to try to drag it through the next 4 years until either the Republicans took back Congress, in which case then he'd have some cover, or until 2024 and Biden and Harris are out and a Republican's in. Then he could say, assuming the Republicans, you know, had the spine to go after these people. You know, it'd be 4 years later. It's tough. House passes Equality Act expanding LGBTQ rights amid GOP concerns, including effect on girls' sports. Well, so far this doesn't mean anything, but it could pass in the Senate. Now, if it goes down party lines, it's 50-50, and Kamala breaks the tie. She will definitely vote for this. They need one Democratic senator to stand up to this. I think they have a shot at it, you know. Some of the more conservative Dems might vote against it because it is crazily, I mean, it's just going to destroy women's sports. They'll be gone. They will be dominated by trans guys. Because if you were born a male and you just say you're trans, and you don't have to get an operation, not under these rules. It would be different if there was a set of rules. In the UK, I just learned this on the Lotus Eaters, I think today, there is a 2-year process. And some states have at least a prototype of a process. 2 years seems about right. I mean, if you've been transitioning for 2 years, then you seem to be committed. You're not, you know, if you're gonna go through that for 2 years, just to play sports, I mean, you know, at least you're committed to your agenda. But I think the radical left are determined to create a system in which you could just walk in and say, well, today I feel femme, I'm a girl today. Or, you know, today I don't. I'm going to play in both leagues. Why not? It all comes back to limits. The Democrats, the socialists, those on the left, they keep unraveling the limits. And they see no reason to have any limits on anything, ever. They just keep pushing the boundaries just to push them. Because that's woke. That's progressive. You know, when they had something to push against 50 years ago, that was different. Gay people were getting a raw deal. People of color, not exactly getting the best equal treatment under the law. Now we're past that. Now they just keep pushing. And now it's gone completely the opposite. Anarchist jurisdictions no more. Biden revokes Trump order. Now, this order basically prevented these cities, like Portland and Seattle, from getting federal funds. Good. But Biden's reversed that. Bad. Because Biden's basically saying, oh yeah, when a Republican's president, go ahead and burn down your cities. Go ahead and do crazy things. You know, when we get back in, we'll just pay for it all. Biden's going to rebuild all these cities. He's going to dump money on these guys because that's what got him elected. By having these Democratic governors step on the brake as hard as they could because of the beer virus and do their best to exacerbate the tensions over the summer, that's what got Biden elected. You know. But he's still the most popular president ever to hold the office, honk, honk, wink, wink. Can't really tell you my true feelings, of course, because the same leftists that support him run YouTube and Google and everywhere else. So, if you want to see my true feelings, have to visit me on BitChute or Rumble. But this sets a very bad precedent. It really does. We have a situation now. Tim Pool just did a great video about how there are a lot of states trying to secede. Well, the counties are trying to secede from their states because they're dominated by major cities in those states like Oregon and California. They're dominated by the major population centers, and all the outskirts are red. They're all farmland. So they're trying to secede from the states. Of course, I don't think that can happen because California, they have a supermajority. There's no way the Democrats would just say, oh yeah, sure, start your own state. Oregon's kind of a similar situation. I don't think it's as bad as California, but pretty close enough. So I don't think they're going to start their own states or anything. I mean, it's nice that they try. They had a mandate like that here in New Jersey. And I named my comic book company South Jersey Rebellion because that was the proposal, to split New Jersey into North and South. And they really are two separate states. I don't know if we could do that here. That'd be something to investigate. Israeli ship targeted in Gulf of Oman blast as officials point finger at Iran. They're going after Iran. So, now, are the Iranians doing this stuff? Probably. But they're probably always doing this kind of stuff. It's just that it's getting a little more hype. And, Biden bombing Syria and Israeli-backed militants is going to push the Iranians to do more, and then Biden can do more. I think the ultimate goal is to invade Iran. This was the goal of the neocons, and now the Democrats have taken up, the neolibs have taken up that mantle. So I think they're trying to gin up support for bombing Iran. Biden orders U.S. military strikes against infrastructure used by Iranian-backed militants in Syria. So this is how far removed they are from actually bombing Iran. It's okay for them, without any authorization, to bomb buildings in a sovereign country because the Iranians back them. And what does that even mean? Do they send them money? Do they send them aid? Do they send them weapons? And what have these Iranian-backed militants done against us? I mean, the Iranians didn't cause 9/11. So, what is Biden doing this for? They're saying the strikes were in response to recent attacks against American and U.S.-led coalition personnel in Iraq, and to, quote, ongoing threats to those personnel. Aren't these the same people who squealed when Trump took out Soleimani? Aren't these the same people who called Trump a dictator every time he did anything? Now it's perfectly fine. Now Biden is presidential. Biden bombs Syria border. This is the same thing. Crossing and kills 22 Iran-backed militia fighters in retaliation to rocket attacks that injured American troops and killed a contractor in Iraq. You know what would save the American troops and contractors? If they were in America. Because the Iranians wouldn't be able to reach them with their bombs. And in fact, they'd have bigger fish to fry. They'd be fighting amongst themselves. This is part of the same airstrike, it appears. The U.S. dropped 7 JDAMs on crossing used by militia groups to move weapons. Supposedly. I mean, this is the Daily Mail. I don't know if they have the bandwidth to do investigative reports. And look, it's right in the middle of the damn country. I mean, oh, no, it's not. No, that's at the edge of Syria. My bad. That's between Syria and Iraq. And we're still in Iraq. Trump was trying to get us out of Syria and Iraq, but the Pentagon lied about the troop levels and kept more in than he wanted. We could be out by now. And in fact, Biden could take everybody out and take credit for bringing the troops home. It would be easier now than it was when Trump got elected because Trump did most of the heavy lifting. He could take credit for it all. But he's not. Instead, he's sending troops back. He's ginning up the war because he's a warmonger. Well, I shouldn't even say that. Biden doesn't care as long as Biden gets his stacks. Biden and Jen Psaki are branded hypocrites after their old tweets slamming Trump's Middle East airstrikes resurfaced following U.S. bombing raid on Syria that killed 22. Don't worry. Twitter will bury them or delete them. And nobody in the American media is even talking about this, really. Not in any serious way. And in fact, all the journalists they couldn't be happier. They're doing everything they can to spin this as, yeah. Oh, well, he had to do it. You know, Biden didn't want to do it, but they attacked our troops. I mean, what did you expect him to do? And this isn't Trump. They're perfectly happy seeing innocent people bombed as long as their president's in, as long as their checks are being signed and they're making their money. Trump was undoing a lot of this. That's why they hate him. It had nothing to do with his tweets or his supposed racism. It was always about this. Trump wasn't a war president. He didn't want war. He said it. When I look about war stuff, I go to antiwar.com. They have a great aggregate and they covered this stuff. I mean, for almost 4 years, I didn't really need to come here. I just slacked off. Well, Biden's given me every reason to come back here and redo more episodes of the anti-war comic. So let's see what they say. UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the dead were members of Iraq's PMF. The U.S. bombed targets in eastern Syria near the Iraqi border on Thursday. According to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, at least 22 members of the Popular Mobilization Forces were killed in the strikes, although a number of is unconfirmed. An Iraqi militia source told Reuters that at least one person was killed in the bombing. The PMF is a group of mostly Shia Iraq state-sponsored militias that formed in 2014 to fight ISIS. Remember ISIS? Supposed enemy? You just bombed the guys who were fighting them? That's because ISIS is Sunni and the Shia Iraqi state is mostly Shia. The U.S. framed the bombing as defensive, blaming the groups they targeted for recent rocket attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq, but no evidence has been presented to substantiate that claim. See, it's what the other sources kind of don't get into. Earlier this month, the rockets hit a U.S. base in Erbil, the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan, killing one contractor. Quote, "We're confident that the target was being used by the same Shia militia that conducted the strikes, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said on Thursday's bombing. The Pentagon described the targets as, quote, infrastructure utilized by Iranian-backed militant groups in eastern Syria. This is the exact sort of rhetoric that was all through the Iraq War, all through Obama's administration, bombing and drone bombing during Afghanistan. Oh, the Pentagon said it's fine. The Pentagon said it was justified. The Pentagon said this and that, and the Secretary of Defense backs him up. Must be true. Except later, if you come back to antiwar.com, oh, I don't know, 6 to 8 months from now, there'll probably be an article about how, you know, it was a wedding or innocent women and children were killed, and or the house was, I don't know, full of bunnies. Yeah, I mean, when Obama bombed he bombed a building in Pakistan, his 4th day in office, and I always mention this because it infuriates me. And I think it's a key moment in history. When they go back to look at Obama's reign, they'll talk about this. And maybe someday we'll know the truth. My theory is this. Obama was only president for 4 days. And the Pentagon came to him like, oh, Mr. President, we have to bomb this apartment building. There's militia there. If we don't bomb them, they could hurt America. They got them all amped up, and Obama said, well, I guess that's what we do here, right? Yeah, let's do this strike. So they did the strike, and it killed women, children, and elderly people. No militia members were there. No one's quite sure if they ever were there. And it was reported as, I think, 9 militants dying, something like that. This is Obama's 4th day in office. And then months later, it was revealed, no, there were no militants. It was a bunch of innocent people killed in Pakistan, not in Afghanistan. Pakistan, our ally in the war on terror, he killed a bunch of innocent people. Imagine a bomb comes flying through from a foreign country and hits an apartment building in your neighborhood and kills 9 people. Imagine the outcry. Yet, that happens to Pakistan, and the Pakistanis just got to suck it up. Because we own their government. Because we run the world. Because guys like Biden are in charge. And here's part of the strategy. Why Joe Biden will continue the U.S. war on Nord Stream 2 till the bitter end. It's all about the world stage. And these guys want to keep, they're big on keeping Russia down. This is a pipeline that they want to build to Europe to deliver, is it natural gas or oil? One or the other. Yeah, Russian gas. And the United States doesn't want this to happen. Burisma in the Ukraine. It's all about that. It was all about energy. This is why my theory is it wasn't just about Biden's corruption and Hunter's corruption. It was also about making sure the Russians couldn't build this pipeline. Because if the Russians build this pipeline, it'll be billions of dollars. It'll be a transaction that the U.S. government doesn't have its fingers in. And gas will flow to Germany, the Russians will get rich, and the United States will be standing on the sidelines going, hey, where's our cut? That's what I think. If an American company was doing this, it'd be done. It'd be a done deal. And here's Biden trying to prove that he's not a tool of the Chinese. U.S. sends another warship through Taiwan Strait on Wednesday, the second such passage under the Biden administration. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet said guided missile destroyer USS Curtis Wilbur made the provocative maneuver. Beijing denounced the provocation. Quote, the move artificially creates risk factors in the Taiwan Strait, deliberately undermines regional peace and stability. We are firmly opposed to this, a spokesman for China's People Liberation Army said. I don't know. This could just be for show, so Biden can prove to people here that he's not a Chinese tool, although I think he is. But regardless, it's very dangerous to do. I unfortunately I have to agree with the communist Chinese on this one. It is dangerous to do. Something could go wrong. One of those missiles could just malfunction and go off, and it could start a war. You could end up starting a war, or you could end up creating a situation in which the United States has to apologize and looks very bad in front of China, but it could start a war. So, you know, I'm not big on this. Ratcheting up the tensions. Biden is old. He thinks the United States is stronger than it is, in my view. He's thinking in terms of the 70s and 80s, or right after the Cold War was over and the Soviet Union fell. We're the number one, baby. We can't be stopped. But we got issues with money. And we've got this woke military that is going to cause some amount of confusion, I think, if there is an actual war. So it does us no good to do this, to be needlessly provocative. And it shows, again, how Biden is just weak. He wants to stomp around the planet saying, see, America's back, baby. Trump didn't need to do that. You know, when he took out Soleimani, he hadn't done anything in months and months and months, and then suddenly, bam, one of their main players taken out. The Iranians were like, holy F. They didn't mess with us for a while. They did something right after to sort of save face, but ultimately they were quiet. Very quiet until Trump left office. Trump showed them how to use power. Biden's just, hey, we're strong. We're still strong. See? He's weak. Biden needs to be impeached. And the only way it's going to happen is if the Republicans take back Congress.